The Negro Justice League.
Welcome to the Negro Justice League, a Black Nerd podcast, episode 79. I'm your host, Cherry.
It's your boy, Jay.
And today we have a special guest. She is an author. Her name is Jem Emuakpor. Jem, say hey, what's up?
Hi.
All right, we are so happy to have you today, and we are going to dive into her book around the 15-minute mark. But for the first 15 minutes, we're going to do our news, and then we're going to talk about Netflix Black Mirror Bandersnatch for about 10 minutes or so. If you haven't seen it, it is it's hard. It's hard to spoil. Is where I was going. I was like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if you don't want to hear anything about a story, don't listen to the first 15 minutes. But if you're okay with knowing what it's about, there's no ending to spoil. Like there's no big kicker. So we're just gonna talk about it a little bit. All right, let me get into this really quickly.
I like spoilers.
You like spoilers?
I like spoilers.
Good, because when I was talking, I was wondering. I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to spoil this for her?
Okay, we can spoil at least one. I think we can spoil like one ending because it's just kind of so quick.
Oh, no, I actually read the ends of books before I even read the book.
Oh, you're one of those. I had to break myself of that habit probably around like the fourth grade or so. No, I was reading Harry Potter, so maybe middle school somewhere. I was like, you know what, I need to stop this. And I didn't even crack the back of books anymore. Okay, so into the news. What's huge in the news right now, and if you've listened to the show and you kind of know my personal style, I don't discuss things that are ignorant. For lack of a better word, I don't indulge in a lot of ignorance on this show. But there are things that happen in the news that we can't just not talk about, that we can't gloss over completely. So I'll just say this: Surviving R. Kelly happened after several decades of his behavior being pretty well known. Lifetime finally decided to make a documentary really detailing what it all went on. I mean, for me watching it, I knew the major points. Everybody kind of knew the major points, but this documentary goes into the specifics. It has a lot of interviews with people kind of talking about how it is he was able to get away with what he's gotten away with. I'm not going to review this on this show. I think, Jay, you're probably okay with that.
Absolutely okay with that.
It's not something that I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get through. And it's definitely not something that I want to sit here and analyze. I'm just saying that it happened. The good thing about it happening is there are some charges stemming from this. So, I mean, you're shining the light into some dark places. So hopefully things happen. But we're just letting you know that it happened. We're aware that it happened. And you're not going to be hearing us talking about it any further. Moving on. The Punisher on Netflix dropped its season 2 trailer. Obviously, we find this interesting because Netflix canceled almost all of its Marvel shows. And we've speculated on previous episodes as to why that is. I think the Punisher was already probably too far into production for them to cancel it just yet. So we're going to get a season 2 and it's probably going to be the end of it. But I actually haven't watched the trailer because, as I said, I do not enjoy spoilers. But if you do, check it out. It's out there. We'll be watching that. Does that drop this month? That's the January?
It drops on the 18th.
Okay, so yeah, by the time this is even published, it'll probably be out. Okay, so also Little has a trailer. Little is super, super, super important because it's like the Black Girl Magic movie of the current time. I don't want to say 2019 because who knows what else is going to come out this year. But it's an Issa Rae film. It's starring Regina Hall and Masai Martin. And what's important about that is she's 12, 14? 14, and she is the youngest Black producer ever. So she's the executive producer in this movie. She's 14 years old. It's the little girl from Blackish. So she's super smart and super cool, and it's awesome. This was filmed in Atlanta actually, and we will be seeing it when it comes out. But Jay, you got your news?
Yeah. So after Little, let's talk about some big news. The number one favorite DC Comics character ever in the world, Aquaman, officially had $1 billion box office, which at this point, if you're a fan of the Negro Justice League, you know we have discussed Aquaman fairly often in regards to how badly we thought this could go. And
I love Jason Momoa, so I was
honestly
fingers crossed the whole time I was pulling for him, and I knew this was his role.
I think the casting is what made at least half of the money.
That is true.
I think Jason Momoa being shirtless was guaranteeing at least $300 million.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I think that was yeah, but this is huge. Not only because this has beaten all of the recent DC movies, Batman versus Superman, Wonder Woman, Man of Steel. It's even beaten the original Dark Knight movie, and is close to beating only by 65 million from last counting Dark Knight Rises, which is the highest grossing DC movie ever. So,
and it's an outstanding movie.
Yeah.
So there's that. It's not just high grossing.
We reviewed it on the last episode. It is a really good comic book movie. It's cliche. It has its cheese, but all in very good places. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go give it some support, because I'm tired of white privileged man going into the neighborhoods and ghettos in his bat costume beating up everybody. We're all about...
Hey!
As you wear the Batman shirt, right?
Yeah, the guy, everybody listening doesn't know, but Jem actually has on a Batman shirt right now.
But yeah, it was definitely a huge surprise, and 2018 was a weird year. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, you know what? I just want to throw something in here because I haven't really enjoyed DC's movies. I like the Dark Knight movies because they were very much like the Dark Knight. They were very much like Batman in the comic books. I didn't enjoy the other movies because they were all so dark. Every movie was Batman. Yeah. And I was just not feeling that. But Aquaman came out. He looked like he was having a good time. And even when things were serious, Jason Momoa's Aquaman could make light of the situation. And that's what I want to see in a comic book movie where the characters aren't so dark. Honestly, Batman's the only one that I want to see dark.
True. I think Cherry called him Aquaman, bro Aquaman, because he was a little bro-ish, but that works. That you kind of need that.
Yeah, they turned Aquaman into a surfer, but I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean he's Aquaman. Kind of seems like if he were human, he'd be a surfer.
Appropriate, I guess.
Yeah, we'll give it to him. Big news, though, for video game people, for especially our Destiny fans. Bungie, who creates Destiny, their original one of the Halo people, Xbox, they are actually splitting with ActiVision and taking complete control of the next Destiny video game, which is a huge thing. One, because a lot of the things that are considered wrong about Destiny, the looting, the grinding, people felt it was ActiVision placing control as the publisher, with Bungie being the developer. So now people are really excited to see what Bungie can do when they have the complete reign of the character in Destiny and the storyline. And also it might be kind of one of those things where we'll see if a developer leaving the publisher is kind of going to become a trend, because there's a lot of times a lot of things from the developers come out and it's usually considered the money makers of the developers, the Activisions, the Ubisofts, although we shout out to Ubisoft, who sometimes make it more money than game wise for people. So look out for more news for that. But I'm not a Destiny fan, but I am down for Bungie to get its own wing, so to speak, with doing the next one. Lastly, for all people who use any technology, there is a company in...
All people? All of us are doing it?
Yes. And this is why. There is a company in England, CES International, happened beginning of January. We didn't cover it because we're on holiday, and not too much happened. But there is one company that decided, for no good reason, to create a program that can track passwords on streaming sites. So that they can then sell that information to streaming companies like Netflix, like Disney, like Hulu, so they can see who's actually using, by probability and mathematics and all that jazz, who's using the passwords, how far apart they are, so that they can start possibly sending notices, which is trash. It is the worst idea I've ever could think, and I get it. Someone's trying to make money off of this. I don't think Netflix is going to care too much, but Disney, especially with their new streaming service, they are going to be completely on board.
You know, Disney runs a tight ship in all aspects of everything. So they were not going to have any password sharing for Disney.
Yeah. So just be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, somehow they just go out of business before this can fully launch, because otherwise, everybody who's using my password, I'm not losing my Netflix account for y'all, all 12 of you. So hopefully we'll figure it out. That's it for the news. Cherry?
All right, so we're going to jump into our Black Mirror Bandersnatch conversation. Our news took a little longer than we expected, so we're going to talk about the book at the 20, probably. I said 15 in the beginning, but we'll hit it at the 20. If you want to skip this Bandersnatch conversation, which will be very brief and I doubt very detailed. Okay, so if you're familiar with Black Mirror as we are, because we have been watching this since the early days of NJL. If you recall, we reviewed season 2. It was a Netflix and chill suggestion, and we had mixed feelings about it, to say the least. I think over the past 3 years, it has grown on us quite a bit. I know that it is one of my favorite series ever. That being said, Bandersnatch is the next level. It's a logical progression of what Black Mirror is. Black Mirror is really a social commentary on technology and people's relationships with technology and how that impacts you as an individual and how it impacts us as society. So they decided, working with Netflix, the logical progression is to create a choose your own adventure style story. I know this is a lot of people's first interaction with the choose your own adventure on Netflix, but they've been doing it for the kids for a while. So if you have children, you've seen the Minecraft, Shrek. They've had a few choose your own adventures for the kids, basically giving you two choices. You want your character to do A or B, and then the story flows based on your choice. Netflix is the first time they did it for the adults. And it fits. Bandersnatch. Bandersnatch. It's
I love that word so much.
Bandersnatch. They did it on purpose.
Lewis Carroll.
It's ridiculous.
It's out of Alice in Wonderland.
Bandersnatch.
Like a chupacabra. It's one of those words. Like, yeah. It. What was I saying? Bandersnatch. Choose your own adventure. Basically, you're watching it, and do you want your character to kill somebody? Do you want your character to walk away? Do you want them to burn the body? You want them to chop it up? Those types of life or death questions. And it makes sense if you're a fan. That was where I was going. With this idea of you watching technology while technology is watching you, it plays with the who is God, who is controlling me. Like, the characters become self-aware, and they're like, somebody's watching me and making my decisions. And you, as someone who's watching and making decisions, you go, oh, they're talking about me. And so it's interesting. It forces you to really think about how you choose to entertain yourself, which is a theme, an ongoing theme in Black Mirror, that like the people we're watching on TV, the people we're playing in computer, our Sims, our avatars, that they have lives and they have feelings, and we're playing with them. And so this continues that feeling. Jay, how do you feel about this style of storytelling, and do you think that Bandersnatch is a good fit for that, or that Black Mirror in general is a good fit?
I think the only real popular thing that could have done something like this is Black Mirror, for exactly what you're talking about. Especially after the last season, which was really strong. We love that. Only Black Mirror could really have an adventure, choose your own adventure story, where it is able to go from something really mundane, like pick cereal, to do you want to have a kung fu fight in the middle of talking with somebody. And it works because of the Black Mirror universe that they've created. The experiment, I think, is a success. Do I think it could have, like, after you've seen it, does the hype of it die down? Yes, because you kind of see the limitations of this. But I'm glad that Black Mirror did it, if only because we can see it can work. And knowing the creators and the writers of Black Mirror and the kind of weirdness they're into, I could definitely see them doing this maybe every year between seasons. Just a nice little something they throw out during the holiday seasons that lets people know they're still working on something. Because it only lasted about an hour and a half. It felt a lot longer because I think we were stressed out. But it really does work. And the idea of who is God, who is the player, who is the creator, Like at one point while we were watching this on our Rabbit stream, and I had to deal with the aspect of waiting for people to give me which options to pick, and then having to deal with the idea of I'm playing this, I'm watching this and picking things while other people are giving me things to pick while technically just watching Netflix. It got a little bit too deep for me. But I think that's what Black Mirror was expecting to happen or wanting to happen. And in that way, that's a huge success to me.
Yeah, I think we added another layer by having a group of us watching you watch it. Instead of just watching it on your own, I'm watching you and pressuring you to make decisions while I was countering against my friends who are like, no, you need to bury the body. I'm like, you need to burn the body. Like those type of... And
with
then,
10-second decisions.
Yeah, and you're in the middle like left, right, what do I do? What do I do? And then we have to deal with the consequences of getting that wrong. Or the consequences of not listening to me. But, no.
Sounds like watching this will help you determine whether or not you're a psycho.
Yeah. It tells you a lot about the people you're with.
You might end up psycho no matter what.
I think it tells you if you have to kill somebody, which friends you want to involve in that.
Wow.
So, I know which ones of y'all can help me hide a body and which ones will mess it up. So,
Yes.
So I enjoyed it. That being said, I do like it. One issue I had was I wish that it was more linear in the fact that you live with your decisions and you reach your end and the whole system cuts off. And if you want to start over, you have to start from the beginning. That's what I would prefer. Instead, it lets you reach a point and then you reach the end of your story. It runs you back to the middle and you get to make it the opposite decision. And you do it loops over and over and over and over.
It's like bookmarks.
Yeah, and like a Groundhog's Day kind of style of playing it over, but one little thing is different. And that annoyed me. I would like it to, because I'm used to reading the books. When you read the books, you basically live with your own decisions because you jump around, you flip the pages, and you flip the book upside down or whatever you have to do, and you get to the end, and that's it. And you can start the story over from the beginning and redo your decisions, but you don't get to, all right, I'm going back 50 pages and going to try this again unless you do it on purpose.
Well, you technically can.
You can't, but it's
make a decision toward the end. You can go back to that last decision.
Yeah,
and
if you're honest enough to the storyline to like, which I'm not. Nah, I'm not dying.
And it doesn't kick you back one decision. It kicks you back like 4 or 5 decisions, which is like, to me, I want to see it be more linear. But that's just me being me. That's not I could just cut it off at the end if I wanted. But
But you want to see all the options, though.
Right.
So
apparently, there's an option that got lost in the algorithm somewhere. They recorded, and now the directors can't find it. So there's an ending in there that we don't know where it is.
So, like, after a week of it coming out, one of the writers or whoever takes care of Black Mirror's Twitch, they just said, "Hey, when you get this selection to like pick up the knife, pick it twice." And it just messed up all of the people on Twitter. Like, are you serious? There's already like 6 or 7 endings, and now you're gonna just drop this random thing that's gonna put us in a whole new pathway. So, apparently, the reason we're not gonna get season 5 anytime soon is because doing all of this, even for an hour and a half, took a lot of man hours and times, which makes sense when you think about it.
That's a lot of writing.
Yeah,
then you have to record all that. Then you have to get the technology to work. I can't imagine. It's more than an hour and a half to them. It's an hour and a half to us, but a lot more to them.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we're gonna, the A through F situation. Comparatively speaking, you've seen every other episode of Black Mirror. And they do the one-off special sometime. Remember they had the Christmas special, which was insane. Remember
which was
the Christmas
technically
special?
like the finale of the actual first season, and it was John Hamm, right?
I don't know. I just remember it being
it was
nuts.
inside they made the avatar of the person that was gonna do all her, that was like her slave, and
that wasn't the Christmas episode.
Wasn't that one?
He was in a cabin. And
I thought they were the same episode.
Nope. It was all snow.
Episode?
Yeah,
because after that ended, he's the one that created that thing, and then he went to prison.
Yeah.
For something. Anyway, they ended up erasing him from everyone.
Yeah. It's that one. Yeah. I was thinking about the other one. There was another one where there's avatars that live in like a
the
Siri
dating game.
No, the one that's like Alexa, but it's a little person this big and it lives in a box on your counter.
Yeah, that was it. John Hamm created that thing. Yeah, he was the one that made
that was all in there.
Damn, I need to go back and watch that.
It's been a minute.
I I still think that's two separate episodes.
We could always find out.
Yeah,
Argue on Twitch.
It
All right,
may
whatever.
have been, because I know when it got to the other one, I was like, wait a second, did the other one end? But then I saw John Hamm. I was like, I guess it was the same episode.
I think it's the same technology, and I think they carried it over into 2 episodes. I feel like I remember that happening.
That could be.
But it was also really long. It was like 2-3 hour.
Yeah, it was a legit movie special type thing.
That was good. All right, let me go back. J, A, B, C, D, F.
I'm gonna give it a B. The aspect of doing it was awesome, but storyline, I would have liked it to be a little bit more linear, like Jerry said. I would have liked to see actually a good ending, so to speak. I don't think you really get that with all the options they try to give you, but just the idea of taking this chance and for it to work the way it did, it's a solid B.
Yeah. When you take when you make someone go through all of the endings, you walk away without an ending. Like, you don't feel the consequences of what you did because everything happened. So it was like nothing happened.
Right. And I like it's one of, the fact of choosing your own adventure is like a video game where you want to be able to say, did I win or did I lose?
Yeah.
And you don't get that with this.
Yeah, that finality of, okay, I'm dead, really dead, or I'm not, or whatever. Right. I think a B. I'll give it a B too. For that reason, kinda, but more because it was a little bit boring to me. Even though, like, if you take away the fact that I had control of the story and you just watched it, it's not particularly entertaining. It's pretty slow. It's very basic, and I think the reason the story is so basic is because the complexity comes in the decision making. So you can't make the story that exciting, I guess.
I agree.
And I know, having watched every episode previously, I know that they can do well, and I know that they can do better. Yeah, it's a B because it was entertaining, but it was like I entertained myself. It was the story didn't entertain me as much as me having to deal with myself. Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
so that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we can move on. We can talk about the book, Jay. I'm gonna let you go ahead and hop into that.
Okay. Well, again, we want to say thank you for Jem coming on this episode. This is her first podcast that she's ever done, and she's doing it with the Negro Justice League. So big ups to that. So I guess first what we'll do is we'll allow her to introduce herself and just kind of explain who she is, how she got into writing a little bit before we get into some of the questions.
All right. Well, my full name is Jem Scott Emuakpor McBride. I write as J.S. Emuakpor. And thank you guys for having me too. Absolutely. But I was born and raised in Nigeria, which is in West Africa. And I've pretty much been writing for most of my life because I have been an avid reader. I didn't start trying to write a novel until I was, in my 30s or something. And the first 2 novels I wrote 2 full-length novels. It took me about a year. I wrote one. They were pure fantasy. They were garbage. They were just pure garbage. The first one was pure garbage. The second one was mostly pure garbage.
Can we buy these? Can we buy these garbage?
You cannot.
Put them on Amazon.
So the third one was really because I got to a point where I felt that my history, the things that I knew as history, Nigerian history, is just my history and nobody knows about it. And there were some really cool people in my history and I want to put it out there. But I can't write historical fiction. That's boring. So since fantasy is my thing, and frankly, in Nigeria, we're like a superstitious kind of people, fantasy isn't really fantasy there. Sometimes fantasy seems real. So it's more like magical realism. That's where I would put it. A friend of mine says it's fantasy. It is not magical realism. But that was when I decided I wanted to write a story about some of our Nigerian historical figures. And my aunt actually suggested Queen Amina. And so that's where I went. Okay. I did a ton of research and as much information as I could find on her. And it's very difficult because Nigerian history is mostly oral tradition. Mm-hmm. So the written history came later. At that point, a lot of the things that she did may have been forgotten or distorted. So it was really hard to find the information But I think I might have been channeling her a little bit to get what I needed, and the book was the result.
So you said that your aunt kind of gave you the idea of writing about Amina. What was it about her tale, or if we can give a brief historical context of why she's so important in Nigerian history, that drawed you to actually create this novel, or your first debut novel? I think you kind of worded it to be, Queen of Zazzau.
I don't know that she is hugely important. When we did our history class in high school in Nigeria, I believe her section was 2 paragraphs. I think it's the fact that she was a lone woman in a sea of men. So we did all these historical figures, and they were men. It was man after man after man after man, and then here's this woman. And I think that's what stood out. My aunt is a very, very strong woman. She's and she teaches other women to be strong women. So I think that's what made her want to delve more into this character. And writing her, I realized that I need more of that. So I'm looking for more women in West African history, because West Africa is what I know, where I have to do a little bit less research, that I can write, because my initial thought was to just write another monarch, and it would probably be a man. And I started that, and then people are like, this strong woman, and I love this character, and I'm like, oh well, maybe I should go with a woman again.
Did Amina always have, like, when you first came to us and got the opportunity to read it, I noticed very quickly, one, its point of view is first person. Did she always have this voice, or this always presence of first person when you originally were thinking of writing it? Because the length of time in the whole novel spans literally decades. Yes. And at sometimes it feels like it could have been almost a Game of Thrones type saga, where it could have been from different points of view, all discussing her and her reign. But you decided to go completely with her first person view of the entire time. Was that always the decision, or did that just come from writing her?
It came from writing her. So when I first started, the very first paragraph that I wrote was actually the last paragraph of the second to last chapter. That was the first paragraph I wrote.
You are really,
because she likes to start at the end.
So I wrote that paragraph, and I wrote it in first person, almost exactly as it is in the book right now. And as I went on writing in first person, I'm like, this is really hard. Let me go to third person. So I went to third person, and I think I was about a third of the way through. Wow. And like I said, I was channeling her, and she started saying, I don't like what you're doing. You need to write this from my point of view. This is my story. Stop making things up. So I went back to the beginning and rewrote everything in first person. And it just kept moving. And things were just, I'm writing things down going, could that possibly have happened? Okay, I guess you say so, And she wanted it in first person, so she got it in first person. But yes, you're right. I could have written this from a lot of other people's points of view as well, and made it maybe more overall, you'd have a more overall vision of it, because all we see is what she sees and what she knows in this.
With us being only able to see from her narrative, was there ever an idea of doing another novel with what's happening during that time, but from other people's perspectives?
There was, actually, because when I initially wrote The God of War, I just thought this dude is a douchebag. And I'm writing his scenes, and I'm thinking, this guy is just a jerk. And then I start thinking, everybody has motivation. There's a reason for people to be the way they are. And although he's a god, he has to have some motivation. So I went back. I think it was maybe the first 2 or 3 scenes of hers with him that I had written. Mm-hmm. I went back and rewrote all of those scenes from his point of view. By the time I got done with that, I was like, dude, you are my hero. Because now I've got his motivations. I'm in his head. I know what he's thinking and why he's behaving the way he's behaving. Like, for instance, there is a scene where she's in mourning and he goes to her and she's mad and she throws something at him and he's all, I think he grabs her hair, but he gets mad too, you know? And when I wrote it from his point of view, it was more like, I don't know, she's sad. What am I supposed to do? She won't stop being sad. So finally he's just like, well, how about I just piss her off? So he pisses her off and then she just lights up, you know, and he's like, you know, this is a lot easier to deal with than her being sad.
He knows how to deal with someone being angry and upset. He doesn't know how to give mourning or grievances to somebody because that's not his
that's not his thing. Right.
Yeah. Just to kind of give people a quick run view of the story. So Amina in the story starts off as the princess. I think she's maybe early 20s, early 30s at the beginning of the story. Yeah. And through the decades of her being princess to warrior to queen, spoilers obviously, she gets connected with the god of war through a prophecy, if I'm correct, of her becoming basically the wife of the god of war. And one of the things that was given to her as kind of a gift was immortality, more or less, or staying forever young. And what's really interesting about the story is during the story telling how she's able to defeat her enemies and how she's able to have Zazzau grow and everything, you get to see her interactions throughout the decades of when she first meets the god of war, Dafaru, and hates him. And as the audience who's only hearing her voice, you feel the reason of why she would hate him, to almost the end of the story where you can clearly see there's a love even before she necessarily sees it. Which I think was just really awesome to be able to give that narrative without having to ever see it from his side.
Yeah.
Was that hard for you to kind of work that around? Because it really does happen throughout the story.
Yeah, it was very, very hard, particularly where she's not realizing what she's feeling, and I want her to not realize it yet kind of realize it, and she doesn't want him to know. And he obviously he's got the ability to know, and yet he's not quite seeing it. And since his behavior is so frequently not appropriate, it was really hard writing from her point of view only and where she hates him, to make his inappropriate behavior less abusive, because it was pretty much abusive. And but I had to make it to where she's like, he's abusing me, I think, maybe. No, do I like that?
Was there ever a moment, especially during, again, Cherry kind of made the statement earlier about news of how we try not to deal with the foolishness, but was there ever a point when you knew this was coming out with the Me Too movement of their aspect of their relationship?
Oh, yeah. I thought, I toned down some things because of Me Too, but I also thought, one, it's historical, and I want to be true to the history as possible. There was no Me Too back then.
Yeah, things happen. Even now.
Yeah.
I mean, if it happens, it happens.
Exactly.
You can't, gloss over it.
So I had to have her be strong in spite of everything else. And the fact is, he is also a god. Whether she's a woman or a man, he is a god. In the hierarchy, he's going to be on top, period.
Mm-hmm. Point blank.
And so, I really tried to put narrative in her head when we're in her head and we're listening to her thoughts and reading her thoughts. I tried to put narrative in there to make it more, I want to do this, but I do not want to submit to this person. I don't want to submit. It's like, you don't want to submit. So you were about to take the trash out, but then as soon as someone says take the trash out, you're like, I'm not taking the trash out.
Hey, listen, I understand that. You tell me to do something right before I was about to do it anyway. I don't feel like doing this. So that was, don't tell me to, wash the dishes when you see me walking into the kitchen.
Right.
That's rude.
That's kind of how she is. And I was trying to get some of that across to people. Some people have read it and they did not get that at all. They were just like, oh my gosh, how could, oh no. But I was really trying to get across that because she herself, she says and does some things that you're just like, wow, you are pompous,
Right.
So she's like, I am royalty. I don't have to do any of the things you want me to do. And
so were there anything, favorite moments or characters while writing them? I could definitely tell you a few of mine, but as you're writing, was there some moments of like, if no one else likes this moment, this is kind of amazing?
So my favorite moment actually is when he removes his gauntlet, removes his bracers. That is by far my favorite moment. Writing it was awesome. Sometimes I go back and just read that paragraph just because that for me is a huge turning point. I know what that means, and I'm hoping that the readers know what that means. He's been wearing these things for years and years and years and years, and he takes them off. Mm-hmm. And so that is huge for me. Another part for me, and all the parts that are my favorite are with him. Any little bit of affection that he shows that is seemingly stepping outside of his character, those mean a lot to me. And it really isn't until recently, like perhaps the last month or so, that I realized the God of War has so much more in common with me than any one of these other characters.
That kind of says a lot about you.
I know it does, right? But I think I feel more of an affinity toward him. Because I'm, I don't show a lot of affection. So there are little things when I do show that affection that people are like, whoa, she just did this. One time, my daughter ran track and field in college, and she jumped the gun one time. And it was the one time that I was able to go to her track meet. She jumped the gun, and she was crying, and I hugged her, and she called her dad and was like, I was so sad, I jumped the gun and mommy hugged me. It was like, this is a big deal where she hugged me.
That's a big moment in her life right there. I think that kind of comes across though in your writing for him, because I think a lot of writers, I know if I were to write anything, he could have been very easily the villain. Mm-hmm. But because of, I guess, maybe your understanding of how you wanted the story to go, you start rooting for him even in his bad. But I think that's a very awesome thing. My favorite moment is the first time, not the first time we meet him, but the first time Amina's friend, bodyguard, sister, Jaruma, meets him.
When she meets him.
Yeah, when she meets him in the God's world, and they have, it's I'm with Amina. Yeah. And when she's even willing to almost look like she's willing to fight the God of War over her friend. I just thought that was a really awesome thing of showing how committed she was. Not just because this was the princess or the future queen, but because this is my friend, my sister, and you're not going to be able, no matter who you are, just take advantage of her.
Right. Yeah, she is my favorite character. I think she's ride or die in every way, and I really like her character, and I have been trying to write a story about her, and I'm like, she is so linked to Amina that I can't really separate them. They've been together since they were in their early 20s till the end, so it's like I'd have to be writing like high school stuff.
Right. Just in terms of how you writing, one of the things that I've noticed, and you talked about this on your website and your blog and kind of in your forwards, is how biasly Afrocentric or how black you want your stories to be for those who connect with your publishing, not feeling the negative aspect of writing black.
Right.
So, what if you can just kind of say why is that such an importance that you think is needing to be done? We obviously agree, being from the Negro Justice League.
I mean, our term that we use for that is blackity black here. When we come across movies and TV shows and material that is unapologetically black, we call it blackity black. But I mean, you can however you want to phrase that, it's fine.
You can use that if you want.
Well, we're definitely underrepresented in mainstream everywhere. I mean, I'm from West Africa. I was born there. I was raised there. And lighter is better. Not because, and I mean, I'm certain it's because white was right. We were colonized and we were doing just fine, running around with the boobs hanging out before the white people came and said, girl, you need some Prada, before they came and started telling us that we weren't good enough. And then, they had technology that we didn't have. So clearly they've got better things. So maybe they are better. And they beat that into us. And in the United States, I mean, years and years and years of subjugation and systematic and systemic racism and in institutionalized racism. And we are now just starting to break out of that. And I think as an African, I didn't even quite see it fully because I came here when I was 16. So I didn't fully see it. And I came from a place where being smart was highly rewarded. I mean, we had class rankings that everybody knew about. So everyone's struggling to be 1, 2, 3, So being intelligent was highly rewarded. And I came here and I was completely different. But the white people treated me different from the way black people treated me, and white people treated me different from the way they treated black Americans. And it took a while. It took until I got to vet school. I'm a veterinarian. Until I got to vet school for me to realize that this thing I'm going through right now in vet school for 4 years, black Americans have been going through it for their entire lives. They are, from the minute they are born, a black American is disadvantaged. I mean, in the hospital, the nurse might treat your mother badly, From the second a black American is born at a disadvantage. I didn't start really, truly being disadvantaged until vet school. And that's when I realized, we need more stuff. We need to be out there. And then when they started, we started getting these videos of police officers shooting black people and claiming they were afraid, I was like, you know what? We give them the benefit of the doubt. If they are afraid, why are they afraid? Why is the sight of an unarmed black person so frightening to you? I mean, unless you just like murdering people, which is a possibility, and murdering a black person is something you get away with a lot easier. That's a possibility. But what if you?
It's a large possibility.
Yeah. And what if you truly are afraid? If you truly are afraid, and not just police officers, people in general, what is it about black people that you fear, other than the fact that you don't see them anywhere, except as criminals in the news? So if you start to see them everywhere, you open up your vampire novel and you see some black people, you'd be like, oh, they are vampires too, Then they're everywhere, So we're starting to see it on television shows now. We're starting to see more black television shows, but a lot of them are black television shows. I mean, I loved Living Single. Don't get me wrong. I like watching television shows that are black. But in this world, in this America, in this United States, how often do you go someplace that's all black or all white?
Well, I mean, I live in Atlanta, so on purpose. I live in
Colorado, so
I'm here for a reason.
Right.
No, I like one thing that she made me think of that I wanted to bring up, because I know I like inserting random health facts into the show whenever I can. When she was talking about black children and them being treated differently even while in utero, there's an interesting trend with health outcomes, with black Americans having worse health outcomes than immigrants from basically anywhere else. And what's interesting, if you take someone who's immigrated from like West Africa, when they come here and you compare them to an African American and control for age, education, everything, like they're exactly the same. So one African American, the African will have better health But as you go along, before we even get to the next generation, within a few years, they'll level out. And the health of the African will come all the way down to the health of the African American. And they, for whatever reason, swear they can't figure out what it is. What's the what it is that makes when Africans come here and they're otherwise healthy, why do they get here? They continue to eat their food. They continue to do their regular health practices. And their health outcomes drop to the level of us. Why is that? And it's racism. Like, long story short,
I absolutely believe that. When I had my second child, when I had my second child, I went into the hospital. My water had broken. I was not actually having active contractions, but I was, and it's my second child, not my first. The nurse asked me if I'm sure I'm not just peeing on myself. My water is broken. Please get this child out of me because my kid is in there. I'm not in labor. You have to induce me.
They do not believe black women in health and black people, but black women is particularly. What was the other? Oh, the one good thing about that, the one caveat, the good thing that comes out of us not being treated appropriately because of racism in healthcare is the opioid epidemic. If you see
that is true.
The opioid epidemic, a lot of it is coming from prescription drug addiction. And prescription drugs, the word is prescription. You have to have access to these things. When black people express that they are in pain, they are not believed. For some reason, white people see a black person in pain. They say, hey, my pain's on level 8 to them. Oh, black, y'all can take pain. You know, y'all are stronger than us. Y'all are better than us. Y'all are physically, you can handle it. You don't need codeine. Let me give you a little Tylenol. Right. And because we don't get prescribed the prescriptions.
Because when you say you're in pain, that you're just trying to get
more drugs. Right. And because of that, we've been prescribed less opioids. And now that we're having an epidemic, it's not impacting us as much as it's impacting others because we never had the prescriptions in the first place.
That's right.
Which is,
so
little small little ha-ha. But that's all we get.
Look at us giving an educational discussion. This is why you love the Negro Justice League.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get.
Where it's going to go.
All right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. We are at time. So thank you again, Jem, for joining us. We love this book. Can you tell us one more time the name of the book, where I can find the book, how do I get to it, how do I find you? Tell me everything that I need to know.
All right. So the name of the book is Queen of Zazzau. You can get it pretty much everywhere. The ebooks are in a whole bunch of places. You can definitely get it on Amazon, get it at Barnes & Noble. You can try your local bookstore. They should be able to order it for you if they don't have it. So I'm all about supporting the local bookstore. So see what you can do. My website is www.jsemuakpor.com and the publishing website is www.afrocentricbooks.com.
All right.
So I'm really glad you guys liked it, and tell your friends to buy my book.
We are so happy you're here. Honestly, like we're really excited for you. We don't get too many authors. We get one or two. We don't get a lot.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, in 3 years.
I get some authors. I will be pointing them in your direction.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. So as usual, subscribe to us in iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Google Play Music, wherever. If you can get a podcast on that app, subscribe to us. If there's an app that has podcasts and they don't have us, make sure you contact us somewhere and we will get it out there. Follow us on Twitter at BlackNerdCast, BlackNerdCast as in podcast. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Negro Justice League. Check us out at NegroJusticeLeague.com. Follow us on Twitch.tv/BlackNerdCast and rate and review us everywhere, particularly iTunes and Facebook. If you are unaware, we recently had our strategic planning retreat in Orlando, Florida, and we had a blast. We have lots of content that came from that. It's on our Twitch. If you were watching, we had Twitch giveaways. They were random, so I couldn't tell you when they were coming. So you have to be subscribed to us on Twitch, and you have to have your notifications on. Again, that's Twitch, twitch.tv/BlackNerdCast. If you want to catch us live in action, that's also where we do a lot of our all of our video game streaming. And if you miss those videos, they eventually make it to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and search for Negro Justice League. On the next episode, I do not have that agenda yet. We have some catching up to do from the holiday. We have some planning to do. We've got a lot of stuff to do. So Just make sure you join us for episode 80. It is going to be a surprise for you, just like it's a surprise for me. I'm Cherry, and this was the Negro Justice League.